to talk about the power of knowing your worth through God's eyes. We live in a world that often measures our worth by our appearance, performance, or popularity. So today, the worth of many people are measured by how popular they are, how popular their family is, how good they are in their appearance, and how great they are in the performance. But what happens when those things fade or fail? What happens when you no longer become popular? What happens where your appearance fade? What happens when there's a reduction in your performance? If our word is tied to those things that can fade, it means we'll end up broken. That is why we must return to the one who made us, to see ourselves through God's eyes. The only way we can have a stable identity, stable what, is when we begin to look at ourselves through the lenses of God and not through the lenses of the Word. So there are key points for us to understand why we must see ourselves through the lens of God. God's views is unchanging. What God sees about you, what God says about you, what God thinks about you is unchanging. And he told Jeremiah in Jeremiah 1:5, he said, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. The identity and the word of Jeremiah did not begin after his birth, but even before he was formed. So what God says about you was even before your formation. What he says about you was before your formation. It was not before, it wasn't before, it was not after your formation, but before you were even born or carved in your mother's womb. So you see, your word is not as a result of what you've done. So what God says about you is not as a result of what you've done or what you did, but his view about you is rooted in God's unchanging love and purpose for your life. Even before the foundation of this world, I formed you, I ordained you. And number two thing is that you're not what they say. The world may label you by your mistakes or your past, but God calls you beloved, redeemed, and chosen. You were chosen generation, a royal priesthood. This is what 1 Peter 2:9 says. And another thing we must understand is knowing your word sets you free. When you know your word, when you know your worth, you live in freedom. You are authentic. You are stable. When you truly know who you are in God, you stop living for validation. When you truly know who you are, you stop seeking for validation. So you start living from identity, not for it. Your confidence rises, your boundaries get healthier, and then you live a life that aligns with your purpose and not what aligns with what people say or what the word says about you. Seeing yourself through God's eyes transforms everything about you. So when you begin to see yourself through God's eyes, it transforms everything about you. It transforms how you live your life. It transforms on how you interact with your environment, how you interact with people, how you see people, how you see relationship, how you see everything. You love yourself rightly. You make decisions from the place of peace, not pressure. You begin to reflect God's image more clearly in your relationship goals and daily life. So you see, when you know your word through God's eyes, you become unshakable. Nothing shakes you. You stop thinking to fit to the word's opinion and start rising to walk in God's truth. That is when the true wholeness begins. The power of knowing your word through the lenses of God.